Mute, please. Multiple things making me feel like an old piece of shit. The entire conversation, normally we get on early and we spend 15 minutes prepping the show, talking about, all right, who can we talk about? Who can we not? Oh, the admin said, don't talk about this person, blah, blah, blah. Jeff knows this thing, but we can't say it yet. All this stuff. What do we talk about?
Old men stuff.
Our prescriptions on our glasses. That's what we talked about.
Yeah.
I had 4 friends come out. My buddies from high school come out and visit me over the week, or we went to the Ohio State game, and I noticed that halfway through the weekend there were so many conversations about like glucosamine and chondroitin and stuff like like how many times do you get up at night to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like total. You get to this age and it's misery loves company all the way.
Well, it was even like watching the Super Bowl. It was like with the halftime show with Kendrick and all that stuff. And like, I guess I'm like vaguely aware of the Kendrick Drake whole scenario just because, I mean, you can't really avoid it. But like, I'm watching like, all right, this is cool. But like, my wife's like, oh, do you know any of these songs? Like, I've never heard any of these fucking songs.
Never heard one.
Like, not a single one. Like, yeah, I'm not a huge hip hop guy to begin with. Certainly anything after like
you couldn't have avoided They Not Like Us this long, could you?
No, I've certainly heard that. I mean, once that came on at the end, I got it.
Yeah, it's the commercial hit.
Yeah. But like most of it, it's like, yeah, if it was rap made after like 1999, I'm pretty much out on all that. But like I was worried. I was like, oh God, like I feel like, I'm 44, about to turn 45. So like I felt like we were like the target audience when it comes to advertising and all that stuff the last, 5 to 10 years. Now we're gone. We're done. We're toast. They're not even interested in us anymore. Like we're going to be the ones begging for like whatever our version of like Springsteen is to be like the halftime show from now on,
Yeah.
It sucks.
It was whatever, I wasn't watching it. Once the Ravens were out, I don't care that much. I had it on. And I tried to pay attention to certain like commercials and halftime, stuff like that. But halftime, we were not the demo they were going after because I was just like, okay, like, yeah, I don't know any of this. It's cool.
Right, and that's fine. I'm good with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. I like Samuel Jackson. I thought that was cool.
That was cool.
That was. I didn't recognize anything else. The other thing making me feel
Serena doing the crip walk was a nice hat tip in our direction. Let's put it that way.
I thought that was her, and I wasn't sure. And then anyway, the other
if you know what a crip walk is, you are of my generation.
Well, she's from Compton.
I know she danced. So that must be what it is. It's a style of dance. My son today is turning 21. Can you believe that? Yeah. I was down. I didn't see, and for full disclosure, I didn't see either of the past 2 games because I was down visiting him last week, which is partially why we didn't do a show. And they had a show and everything. But I went down for his birthday, and there was just stuff going on. And so I was like following along both of the games. But he's 21, so that also makes me feel really old. But anyway, I didn't see either really of the games. I followed along as best as I could on my phone. And then I kind of read the threads. I read the articles on Maryland at 247sports.com message board. So I obviously got the picture of what happened. And my headline today is Bye-Bye Derik, because I've been the one saying, hey, maybe he'll come back. There's a small chance. There's no – he just bitch slapped 2 lottery picks.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny, like thinking afterwards, because people have been like, he doesn't seem really motivated, and all of a sudden – 50 scouts in the house, bam, he's at his best.
He's motivated for what he's motivated for, right?
Yeah, but I mean, hey, we all have our lapses and, carrots that you can wave in front of us. And clearly that's the case with Derik Queen.
Well, the issue too is the Ohio State game was a total team collapse and just the most Maryland thing to happen ever on a road game like that. But I'm going to take a big L on that one personally because I had X'd or tweeted or shitted or however you want to, whatever referring to it, the cool kids refer to it now, after the Gillespie banked in garbage 3 went in like 2 weeks ago, thinking, oh my God, this shot always goes in against Maryland. We totally deserve one of those. And what happens literally the next time that situation
That's really
comes
true.
up?
I didn't think of that connection. And it was great defense by Rodney Rice. It was the only good defense anyone played on Thornton in that whole second half.
Absolutely. The best they played against Bruce the whole game. That second half, they just ran pick and roll and was just killing everybody. And then Rodney gets up in his face and plays it perfectly, and he just hits a fadeaway 1 foot, 35-footer off the glass. And it's just, come on.
One thing that's super annoying, though, when I watched the highlights, and they showed all the Thornton, like, you saw all those drives and everything, that guy just barrels through people.
He got some really,
he creates contact, and then they were calling it on Gillespie. He probably
there's a little Mellow Trimble action there, like he's
like,
maybe even worse. Maybe even worse. It sounds like a homer saying that, but there was some that were questionable. There was one where he just straight up dribbled into the ring and like did like a jump step.
That's the one I saw.
Gillespie like 3 feet off, and it was a foul, which was crazy. There was one earlier where DHS swiped down at the ball. I don't think he touched anything.
You could watch on the replay like his hand whiff.
Yeah,
just like
that's why they always tell you not to do the dramatic swipe down, but it was definitely a whiff. Not to say they lost it because of the refs. The offense was bad second half, and they just couldn't stop Thorne. I mean, there were definitely some questionable calls, but
they stopped playing on the offensive end. I mean,
Queen missed six free throws in that game, and then Thornton, they put Willard puts DHS in for that one late possession to try to find anybody who can slow him down. He just goes straight line drive around him, nothing fancy, goaltending on Juju, and that was really the decider right there. But I mean, they bounced back, so it'll be interesting to see in this Nebraska game. Can you get that momentum going on the road from that 2-game trip again, or was that just a total, blip, and it's going to go back to being almost an automatic loss when you play on the road?
Well, every year when you have, seasons that have a lot of games, maybe it doesn't happen in football as much, but certainly baseball and other sports where you expect that there's going to be games where you blow leads. It's going to happen, but you expect it to happen sometimes, and sometimes in your favor, and you expect it to work out the variance, but it's happening so many times where they've got a lead, they've got control of the game. 5 times now on the road it's happened, I think. 5. You can't just, if they, whatever it is, killer instinct, whatever you want to call it, if they could figure that out, they're like a top 10 team. Because
I think they've been up at halftime, I think, in all but one of those Big Ten road losses. And the one they weren't up, I think they were down like 3 points at Washington.
Well, haven't they only lost? They haven't lost a game by more than 6 points this year. Like, like they're a good team. I mean, this is unquestionably a good basketball team. They're not very deep, so like when you get in these second half Big Ten ref just calling fouls on everything, just, for shits and giggles, they're in real trouble in those scenarios. That certainly happened a bit. Reese was taken completely out of that game last week. Just at least 2 of those were questionable at best. But for the most part, we know what Maryland is right now. Like, they're a really good team. They've got one of the better starting 5s in the country. When they're on, they can beat literally anybody. And they've, to this point, other than at Washington, kind of Northwestern too, but they're actually not terrible. They don't really have bad losses on the resume. Just, like any team, when you're on the road and things get tough. I'll tell you what I really don't like, and I understand Willard doing it because they haven't been great at the end of these games, like you've been saying, protecting leads, Larry, where he does that kind of old school Coach K slow ball stuff at the end, letting 20 seconds drip off the clock before they really try to run anything. I really don't like that, and I'm not sure that that's the answer. But they got to try something different because it hadn't worked there, and it's made some games come a little closer, be a little closer at the end of them than they really should have been. And Nebraska's turned it around again. They were really good for a while. They went in a really big rut, and now they've ripped off like another 4 in a row. So they're tough to beat at home anyway. They played Maryland really well at Xfinity Center earlier in the season. I don't feel good about that game. I don't know why I should feel good about that game. That feels like an L to me, and I sure hope they find a way to pull it off. But that's the one you got to worry about. Then you got those 3 games at home, and that's really where you can kind of put a stamp on this thing. If you find a way to get that done tomorrow night, and then you got those 3 games at home before you get in that kind of tricky last week and a half stretch, they could really set themselves up for a nice tourney run because there's a lot to like about this team, despite a couple of these losses being real, punches in the what.
Hey, real quick, everybody, before we go on, I wanted to remind everybody we are doing mailbag questions. So if you're live with us right now, throw some questions in the chat. I'm trying to keep track of everything, stuff in the message board and stuff from the chat. Throw them in there. When we get towards the end of the show, we're going to answer them. So, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, it's awful. It's gut wrenching. It's because you feel like, hey, they figured it out. They figured it out. They're good. They're good. They're up to 18th in the country. Damn it! It happened again. It's Charlie Brown in the football.
Dude, that was the exact damn it from the Rashid clip.
Yeah,
Rashid, damn it.
10 years later.
Exact same, damn it. I was like sitting courtside for that Ohio State game, and you could feel it the whole time. Every time Maryland had a chance, they'd get it up to 9, 13, whatever. And every single time they failed to extend, where if you extend any of those times up to like 20 or more, you're probably going to win. They had it to 17 momentarily at one point, but you could feel it happening the whole time, just that impending doom. So that's why this Nebraska one, and then also even Penn State, coming up, that's been a house of horrors for them. I don't even know what they've lost consecutively at Penn State. It's a lot though, maybe 5 in a row, something like that. It's
terrible. Yeah. Now this is a kind of an ass Penn State team, even by their standards.
They're bad,
but
yeah.
Like you should never count on Maryland going up there and winning because their recent record is really not great.
And then you mentioned the bench, Paul. I wish there was more data out there on bench production. Maybe there is, and I haven't found it. But not only like historically and just for this season, like you would think it's weird. Like you would think that would be a semi-available stat, like which teams have the best bench. I can't find it anywhere, but their bench, I think, might be historically unproductive. Like they literally have not outscored the opposing team's bench in any games against Power 5 teams, the whole Power Conference teams. So none of the Big Ten games, Villanova, Marquette, their bench has not outscored the other team's bench one time in those like 17 or whatever games, which is almost impossible. And last time I tabulated it, the average margin was literally like 20-6. So if I find those stats, it'll be an interesting story to write about how they're succeeding and ranked, but literally no scoring pretty much off the bench at all.
Well, it reminded me a bit of one of the earlier Turge teams. I don't remember which year it was, but one of those teams also had a similarly terrible bench. Like Nickens was on it, but it was like late Nickens where he really wasn't quite getting it done, and a couple other guys. It might have been I don't know, I can't place it now. But like that was another team that had a really good starting 5 and just was getting nothing off the bench. So like it's really tough, and you understand the kind of position that Willard's put himself in. Like you maybe hoped like, okay, well, Jay Young's played 5 years of college basketball. You'd assume he's going to be able to play all right. And he's been fine. He's just not, he knows his job isn't out there to put the ball in the bucket. When it comes to Geronimo, it's like, okay, you're not counting on him to put up points, but he also gives you other things.
He does. I feel like he should probably be playing a little more. He does all the, anytime he gets in the game, there's immediately a hustle play, a block, whatever it might be. A lot of times something that doesn't show up in the scoreboard. Gapara gives you a little more offensive firepower, but you haven't really been getting scoring from him anyways. So I feel like down the stretch, he could help them by getting a few more minutes a game.
Yeah, I was saying that back when they were in that rut in early, after Christmas and early January, Geronimo couldn't get off the bench, and it's like, all right, well, why? I mean, the only issue I ever had with Jordan Geronimo was playing him at the 3, which was psychotic. But when you play him at the 4, he's a perfectly serviceable college basketball player who's going to give you a lot of stuff in the stat sheet and just make generally winning plays. Like those
he
guys
doesn't try
are
to
good.
do too much. He doesn't try to, he doesn't force anything. He's always boxing out. He's crazy athletic. I think he deserves. I think at that midseason point you were talking about was probably when Gapari had that run where he turned into an NBA All-Star for 3 games and averaged like 18 points a game.
Right.
And then that is long gone at this stage. But the reality is they're going to have to get by playing a short rotation and really hope foul trouble and fatigue don't do them in.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a tournament situation that's not very good because you're playing back to back kind of stuff. So that's going to be really rough.
It's not great, but Coach K's run, he used to run 7 guys out there most of the time. I mean, there are
lotto picks.
Yeah, with lotto picks. But I mean, these guys are young. Like this is
and favorable officiating.
Yeah, when they're playing AAU, they're playing 4 games a weekend, 5 games a weekend, and they're fine. Like I'm not worried about that so much. I wish you could get more production from the bench, but I'm not so worried about fatigue as much. I kind of wish. My only wish strategically is I wish Kevin would have maybe put Miguel more with some of the backups to be that kind of like NBA lead guard. To put him out there with Jay and give Gillespie a blow, give Rice a blow, let him run with some of those guys and do some of his kind of solo, microwave kind of stuff where he just gets hot, gets. That's
what I was preaching a few weeks ago. Some people disagreed. Like, doesn't matter where they're scoring, whether it's the bench or not. But if he's shooting, taking away a shot from somebody else on the court, wouldn't you rather have it be if he's with 2 reserves than with the other 4 starters and taking away shots from those guys? I mean, it's not science, and then the catch there is obviously you still have to put someone in place of him in the starting lineup. DHS obviously is very limited, but he's probably the only guy that you could really work in there because there's not really a lot of depth. So that's the catch. But, I was preaching that too. I thought then you just let him be a volume scorer with the second unit kind of thing. It worked last year. He's six man of the year in the AAC last year.
Yeah, and you can, the reality is if we're just being real about it, DHS is just not a player at this level. He's just not. And that's a shame. Yeah. He's a great kid. I hope he finds his level. I hope he was great. But it just doesn't look like it's happening here. Yeah. And I hope when he does get on the court, he's able to make some plays. And he certainly has had his moments this year. Basically almost got us back into that Marquette game by himself. I mean, there have been some good moments here and there, but he's just not developed into a guy you can play. And that if you're Willard and you're putting this roster, you may think, okay, last year I needed too much from him. This year I just need him to be a serviceable, 18-minute, 20-minute guy, and he's just not good enough to do that here.
You got to be able to either hit open threes, or create shots if you're a guard, and he can't do it. And really, he doesn't go right either. He hasn't really developed a right, so he's going left every time. I mean, if he sticks it out, that's great, and they want him back. That's great, good for him. I'm sure he can find a role. If he doesn't, I know a guy who's coaching at George Mason this year who recruited him to Maryland, who's also killing it. I don't know if you guys have seen. I think Mason's still first in the A10. Speaking of Tony Skinn, so if DHS decides to roll out, that's my early crystal ball would be Mason with Tony Skinn.
I got my eyes on Tony Skinn. Like if things go wrong here, I like what we're doing over there.
He's looking good, man. It's no surprise.
We get these kind of compliments. Good discussion. That's what we're doing.
I'll take it.
Comment.
I'll take that. It's better than not watching. Like most of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Good discussion. And
no, I mean it's fun. This is fun. This is what we want, right? Maryland's ranked. It's mid-February. This is what we should be demanding of a basketball program here. I mean, you should be ranked. You should be in discussing what your seed's going to be, how you're going to finish off the schedule. This is what this program needs to be. And if it's not, something's desperately wrong here.
The crazy
So,
thing
yeah,
is,
we can,
like, it feels so it's like fun right now. You got the buzz going. It feels like that March thing, and it's for a team that, while they're good, is rated number 25 right now. Like a few years back, that would have just been, okay, we'll see what they do. But now we're also starved for an exciting March. It's like, it feels like a top 10 team or something, which it could be.
Well, it feels like they're so close. It feels like they're on the edge of that. Like they've blown these road games. And they're all very
as just
close.
about everybody has, to be fair. I mean, but like you said, they've all been close.
An inordinate number of them, though.
Yeah.
If they, how many have there been? 5? If they win 2 of those, even think what they'd be ranked right now. They'd be in the top 15. They'd be fighting for the Big Ten title, right? They very easily could have won 2 of those road games or more. One bucket in a few of those games. Right?
There's certainly a lot more. Like I don't know what their luck rating is on Ken Pom right now. I imagine it's pretty terrible, right? I mean, they have really struggled in late half and late game scenarios. They've certainly lost more games than they should have at the end of games than pulled them out. So
their luck rating is minus 0.044, 286th in the country.
Yeah.
So one of the most unlucky teams in the country.
Right.
So and now we're the inverse of that Mellow team. They're the inverse of that. It feels like it feels like Gillespie. I haven't done the numbers yet, but it feels like he's the barometer. Like basically almost every game that they've lost is when he only has an off game 1 out of every 4 or 5 games. But it feels almost every one of those losses were when he struggled.
Yes, and when he has off games, he has like off games. He has like me running out there off games, like bad. So if you get Gillespie on a good day, you're feeling pretty good because the whole thing seems to kind of pretty much revolve around him. The other guys, you can have an off night from one of the bigs or from Rodney or Selton and be fine because you've got enough other guys who can pick up that slack. But if Gillespie's off, they're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and then the other thing is with Miguel, I mean, if he keeps shooting it like this, that makes him so much harder to beat. I mean, this is the most obvious thing ever, but 40-minute game, threes are so inordinately important, even compared to the NBA. And when you get a guy who's regularly shooting 50%, I don't know what he was, 5 of 8 the other day. He's now. It felt
he's like 45% in conference play or something.
Yeah,
He's
and like
ridiculous.
41 for the season. If he can keep hitting those, that's enormous. And I think, Rodney Rice, I think, has been really underrated too. Everybody kind of thought he was a cast-off or didn't know what to expect from him. Didn't realize how talented he was. And I think we discussed this on the show before. If you get him and Gillespie back next year, which I've written a bunch about on the site, how that's looking, but. That's a great backcourt. You still need a ton in the front court, obviously.
You need a ton. You need a ton.
It's pretty bold. I will say it's a bold move. Very confident move by Willard, not taking any high school big men and just pushing it to the portal. That's bold. Who knows? Maybe he's heard some rumors on a few guys who might be.
Or maybe Queen's coming back.
Larry already. What are we? 23 minutes in. Larry's already back on the wagon
to visit, like coming back to visit and see his friends. You mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Next year,
coming back to play. All right. If he's not coming back and they need some replacements, what about the recruiting, Jeff, for next year's class?
I mean, they don't have any big men on their list as far as I know in 2025, and they haven't for a long time. It's been the plan since early in the season to wait for the portal, which, would be a little bit risky when you're losing 1-star big men, but you're losing 2-star big men, most likely, unless you get a miracle with Queen. So it's a ballsy move, but maybe he knows some things we don't know. But in terms of high school kids, the only high school senior they're recruiting is Chance Mallory, the point guard from Virginia, who decommitted when Tony Bennett retired.
So I will say one thing I just want to add to I'm sure we'll probably get into this with questions a little bit, but the one thing that makes me feel a bit better about where Maryland is as a program right now under Willard is because Willard came into the season talking up the fact that he had that analytics guy who convinced him about playing fast, putting up early shots is not bad. Like, that's actually good. Recruiting guys who shoot 40% from three is what you need to do out of the portal, because if you're getting guards who can't shoot, it's pointless. There's no point doing that anymore. So my hope here is that he's seeing, okay, well, guess what? I just pulled, two major guys out of the portal who are in my starting five, right? And we're kind of killing it. Or three guys out of the portal in my starting five, and we're killing it this year. And all those guys shoot really well from three. I hope that sticks, because I imagine next year, even if you're able to find two quality, serviceable bigs, and Gapari sticks around, which nobody's for sure anymore, you probably still got to play pretty small next year. And Willard is not been interested in doing that for basically his entire career to this point. So I'm hoping that no matter how the season goes, it finishes off well, and he takes the lesson from this season as, I can do this again. This can be the formula to win basketball games here. Because you got
to give him credit too. Remember last spring, everybody was all about Malik Mack and Doug McDaniel, because they were the two big local names, and Mack had that Maryland flag tattoo on his arm, and everybody went nuts about that, assuming he'd come to Maryland. And Willard really didn't show much of any interest in either of them. He spotlighted Gillespie early on, and that was his guy. Went out, got him, and that was it. And he's been, if you look at the stats, those guys aren't in his stratosphere this year.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for putting this roster together the way it is. I mean, I just hope that's a harbinger for the future and not just a one-off, because people talk about Maryland's team and they're like, it's all about the two bigs. I don't think it's about the two bigs. I think it's about the threes, and I think it's about the playing style. I think the fact that they're able to play fast, they're doing that kind of Roy Williams style secondary break off of made opponent baskets, which has earned them a lot of free points this year, a lot of good shots. I think, all that stuff kind of weaves together. Like, yes, it's great having Julian Reese and Derik Queen, but that doesn't make this team to me. It's the play speed and being able to shoot well from three.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. Question is, like, is there anybody on the roster who can help you in the front court next year? Gapari can, obviously, off the bench, but can he?
That's it.
Yeah, you can't really bank on him being a starter. Braden Pierce, totally unproven, long-term developmental guy who's been out this whole year. You hope he can, but he's, you don't know. So you're going to have to,
coming off an eye surgery, like, that's not something you just recover from easily too. I mean,
yeah, it was a major eye injury. And so, like, he's got to keep it going next year. I think you're right. I think it'll be a lot more attractive, but the money thing is interesting, because I don't think they're going to have as much revenue sharing money as some of the schools they're competing against. So, as we go to this revenue sharing model where you're just blatantly, legally throwing millions of dollars in contracts basically at guys, it's no more like, wink, wink kind of stuff. That's going to be interesting to see, how they fare on the open market.
That's eventually going to lead to actual contracts, and players are not going to be able to just leave.
Hopefully.
That's coming.
It needs to.
It has to.
That will be better than the current situation.
It really does. It really does. It's like people are saying, oh, well, even in the pros, I'm sure I've said this on here before, even in the pros, every player is not a free agent every year. I mean, that's just insanity. It's total anarchy, but
it's swung way too far the other way. It's hard for fans, right, to latch onto the team. It's hard for coaches to manage a team, and
thank your local NCAA for being too scared to jump into this before Congress and courts and everybody else did. I mean, that's how it got to anarchy, because the rule-making body in college sports decided they didn't want to deal with it.
Man, how is Rutgers so bad? I just happened to see the score. They're losing. They blew a big lead and are losing to Iowa. I looked at that ESPN mock draft. They have those two kids second and third.
Yeah,
Dylan Harper second.
How bad is everybody else on the team? I mean,
even if they are bad, everyone else is bad. But still, if you have the number 2 and 3 pick,
that's
nothing against Eichel. I always thought he was, pretty good, gritty coach, no frills. But for a school like Rutgers, solid. But I feel like you got to get rid of your coach if you have the second and third pick and you're not even close to making the tournament.
Well, one development that's coming out of that whole all the legislation stuff the $20 million that's being paid. Part of also what I've heard from watching, I watch a lot of college football YouTube channels, and I've heard a lot of them, and I listen to the SiriusXM channel. There's supposedly, along with that, is going to be enforcement of the payment system. And if that happens, this is what I've been saying for a very long time. The only way Maryland has a chance in football to compete, if other schools, if actual enforcement happens, and Maryland now all of a sudden has a competitive payroll with everybody else, that is now the opening for Maryland to maybe get an actual competitive team at a conference championship level team. They could maybe do it if that happens.
It doesn't seem like you could possibly have a system in place though where that would be manageable or sustainable. Every deal over $300 has to get evaluated and judged whether it's market value. Can you imagine how many deals that's going to be?
There's no way. There's just no way.
It's just going to revert back to old style.
Yes.
Pre-NIL. They're going to be getting paid under the table.
Yeah, it's just the schools that are going to cheat are always going to cheat. And the schools like Maryland, which I wish would cheat, will never cheat. I mean, I've begged Maryland to cheat for decades, and they just won't do it, and it drives me insane.
They don't.
Please cheat.
They do cheat. That one guy got a ride to class. Remember?
Oh, that's right. Rudy Archer got a ride to class.
And they had the.
Did they not cheat, or they did not cheat as much?
You had the filthy Gary Williams scandal with Michael Parker and his trainer.
Yeah,
remember that? So they got played down and dirty.
Yeah, well, I mean Maryland didn't even put together like an NIL collective.
But if it happens, in the
scary.
NFL they have parity, and obviously you have teams that come out, and there's been a couple dynasties or whatever. But any team can jump every year out of nowhere. Your shirt, Paul, your team this year did it. The teams do it all the time. When there's a salary cap and there's enforcement of that cap and payment rules, it creates parity, and that's something Maryland could take advantage of, especially in the Power 5.
Well, let me.
Power 2.
Power 2. The Elite 2. We got to come with a better name for that. The Terrific 2. I don't know. Let me do tap dancing around this issue. Let me say something that's going to put Larry off, and it's going to piss him off. But that's all right.
It won't piss
Larry,
me off.
You know I'm a football guy, right? I would love nothing more than Maryland football to actually turn into like a real college football program. However, I've come to the point where I actually believe that's never actually going to happen. And I would much rather take a larger chunk of that $20 million and throw it at basketball, because Maryland basketball is elite. If it's not elite, it should be elite. If it's not elite, we should demand that it's elite. And the fact that it isn't pretty much drives me crazy, even though I'm not as much of a college basketball guy as I'm a football guy. I'm convinced that you got to try and win the biggest thing you can win the biggest at. And you can't convince me that an extra $3 million out of that 20 going to basketball instead of football is going to make that much of a difference on the football side, where it might make all the difference on the basketball side. That's going to be the thing. Let me just preview the things I'm going to complain about over the next few years. That's going to be the big one.
People say that a lot, but
football brings in the money, Larry. But what's the difference between a 5-7 team and a 7-5 team? Because I don't think
it might be the difference between if all this enforcement happens and Maryland. Listen, Maryland is in a position where they're going to be getting a lot of money from the Big Ten. The Big Ten and SEC schools are going to be at a monster advantage over every other conference, including the ACC and the Big 12. Those ACC schools, many of them are not going to be able to pay the full allotment of the $20 million. They're not getting as much money.
Do we get to play those guys in conference? Because that would be sweet.
No, but Maryland recruits against them, and Virginia Tech and Virginia and North Carolina and Pitt and some others all around in the area. West Virginia, Maryland recruits against these guys. And if Maryland's got a lot more money, well, hey, now instead of getting mid 3-star guys and low 4 stars, maybe they're all getting high 3 stars and into the mid 4s, because all these other schools where some of those kids go to, they don't anymore because Maryland's got the money and the ACC is dying, and they should. And every Maryland fan should root for the ACC to stay in this purgatory they're in for as long as possible, and I hope those teams just wither away while Maryland's collecting more and more money every year and putting it into facilities and to NIL and all those things. Like, that could happen.
I think if this were a closed vacuum system, that could happen. But like, I've been sold that before for decades. Oh, we just do a little bit of this, it'll work. Just do this, it'll work. It's probably not going to work. But I hope it works.
It's a different world, though. This is entirely different than anything that's happened in the past, which means that, the saying about insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different outcomes. Well, this is different. This is not the same anymore. So a different outcome is possible.
So this is going to be a premium nugget, but I'll go ahead and bust it out.
Yeah, go ahead, man. I've been teeing you up for this one.
Love it.
So I'm hearing it's going to be 14 million of the 20 million, 14 for football, 4 for basketball, and 2 for women's. I'm hearing that's pretty much locked in at this point.
$4 million for men's basketball. That's it. That's probably less than they have this year, isn't it?
No, but we'll be able to do.
Yeah, that's right, almost exactly in the range of what they had this year.
But
not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Not that $4 million of payroll plus NIL.
The question there is like, as long as you can get the legit NIL deals, because in Ohio State, every car dealership in town is going to be like, hell yeah, I'll give them 10 grand.
Yeah, well, and Under Armour, start hiring people for your commercials, man.
You need you really need, basically, that's it. You need Under Armour to start throwing around some big, like Nike has with some of these, the Rutgers guys. I think they're.
What's Eastern Motors up to, man? Can we? We got to start shaking the bushes here.
Yo, Job credit.
Maybe the most it's the most catchy jingle of all time. Well, no, 877 cash now, but that's number 2.
Hey,
that's big Senate car insurance guy.
Hey, I like this username. Better than Paul at softball.
The problem is I could probably give you 3 people I think that is, and it's going to be one of them.
It's one of
most of them wouldn't even bother signing up to watch this thing. So,
all right,
down.
But I would say $2 million for the women. That's got to be elite, like 95th percentile, I bet. Kind of a reward for Brenda for everything she's done, obviously. And then there's today also there had been a decision where they had to balance. I don't know what form of legal decision it was. I remember it was late.
It was guidance.
The Biden's late call to say that Title IX needs to even the payments. You need to have as much for NIL going to women as men's athletes. And then today they came out and basically threw that out the window, which is smart, I think.
Yeah, that was never gonna.
Paul,
I don't think.
You can't guess who I like this game we have going on in the chat today. Whoever that is, thank you. This is very entertaining.
But I can't verify if you're better than me at softball, but I know who you are. That's kind of the whole crutch here.
Might be Norlander getting his revenge.
Norlander doesn't seem like much of that.
All right, Jeff, how about football recruiting? Maryland got a big commit. What else?
Pretty quiet lately. This is a slow time until the portal comes around in the spring. I mean, there'll be more recruiting until then. I'm sure they'll get a few more commits in 2026. But right now, you're waiting for the portal and just babysitting, trying to survive every day, survive in advance with Zion Ely. He's now obviously the 5-star defensive end from Baltimore, number 2 player in the country, committed to Maryland probably a couple months ago now, and now he's coming out taking all these visits, which anybody in his position would be smart to do. That's leverage and money, obviously. So, and branding. At this point, these kids have advisors who are so good in terms of building up marketability and stuff that very few of them will just commit early and shut it down because you're giving away all your leverage there. So that's obviously the biggest story to follow. But I'm not following every single thing he says because we got many months till signing day. They got 10 transfers in the portal so far. I still feel like they need, a handful of really good players. When I sat earlier today. I was writing some football stuff, and I was trying to think of like who the best players on the team are. And usually, even when Maryland's, you don't think they're going to be very good, you still have, star here, proven star there, whoever it might be, a Nick Cross kind of guy, or whatever else. And when you think about next year's team, they could be good, and I'm sure they'll add more pieces. But at this very moment, there is like not much star power at all.
I'm scared to death right now looking at
and
that
the
roster.
schedule. And look at the schedule. Try to find the win.
The
Try to
schedule.
find the wins.
Like who would you say? Who would you say are the 5 biggest stars on the roster currently?
Malik Washington.
Larry's right though.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It would take a minute. It would take a minute to figure that. I don't know. One of the linebackers.
Probably that's where the kid Caleb Wheatland is really good. They do have really good linebackers. None of them are established names.
Yeah.
I think they'll be really good there, but there's not a.
Nothing.
I think Nolan Ray. Nolan Ray
yeah.
could be a star running back, but he's not a established star.
If you just go through the
receivers,
positions,
you lost both the stars. Farouk would have to be one of your 5 best players, but he's a new guy. Offensive line, there's nobody proven there, so a lot of things need to go right. And I do like that tight end though. They got in the portal. They got, I think, an underrated tight end from Georgia State. But yeah, it's hard to see who the guys are.
It's like a 3-win roster right now. If we're just being honest about it, I have no expectations that UCLA kid is any good, and
you better be.
There's just no way you can expect somebody to walk in like that off the street and be good. He barely played at UCLA. Yes, he had like one good game against one good team. You can't count on that. Malik Washington is obviously an incredible talent and has shown that everywhere he's gone, but you can't expect a true freshman to walk into college football and be that good, especially behind that offensive line and with not a lot of weapons out there. If you look in the defense, they lost all 3 of their best players off of a not good defensive line. You've got the linebackers, which are pretty solid, and you kept most of them around. The secondary, you lost at least your 2 or 3 best players out of a really kind of crap secondary. It's bad right now. Receivers are gone. Farouk is a good receiver, but after that, you got nothing.
He's the only proven skill player on the whole offense, really.
Yeah, unless you count Ray, who certainly showed out a bit last year,
or Octavian Smith. Those are guys who will be solid. But in terms of an impact, a guy who is an impact guy, like even last year, they came in with what was the win over under last year, like 6.5.
Yeah, I think.
And they came in. You had guys like Hemby, Prather, Felton, and Dante Trader. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and the Jordan Phillips, the 2 4-stars around Tazi and Tommy A. It's bad, man. It's really bad. And obviously you've got the spring. You're probably going to lose another 5 to 7 guys and hopefully pick up another 10. But man, I'm scared. I'm really scared about the status of the program, because if Locke has a bad year next year, like the torches and pitchforks are coming out.
Yeah, that's why it's a doubly painful. It's a bad time to have what might not be a good roster considering this past year. And I don't know if you guys read my story about the revenue and ticket sales on the site, but they had the second lowest ticket sales, was it the low? I guess because Northwestern is private, we don't know what their numbers are, but Maryland had either the second worst or the worst ticket revenue in the Big Ten. One interesting thing from last year on the same report was that it's not just the number of people who are showing up, it's that they're spending way less. It was like Ohio State averages, I don't know what it was, $60, whatever it might be. And Maryland was literally like per attendee was like 40% of those other schools. So even when they do show up, they're not buying the expensive jumbo crab, whatever that monstrosity they created. I don't even know if they still sell that thing at CQ, but
the crab pretzel. Yeah.
Yeah. And think about next year when we saw how empty the stands were at the start of next year. It could be.
It's not going to be great. It's not going to be great. And the funny thing is, none of this should be surprising. I mean, you've been to Maryland games, right? It's like taking your kids to the county fair most of the time, whereas you go to, a real football school, frankly, it's like going to church. Like, it's just a different thing. It is a totally different thing. And that's why everybody's like, gets mad at me about doomsaying about Maryland football. Like, I'm sorry. We don't have a cult. I'm sorry we don't have a cult. We don't. You need a cult. If you want to be good at football.
People make fun of other cults, but that's why
you need one. That's why they're good. They tithe to it. I mean, they literally, their lives are tied to the success of that program. Yeah. And if they don't win, they will boot your ass. And look at Nebraska. Yeah. They were willing to take Pelini and send him to the locker room for 10 years of middling success after he was winning 9 to 10 games a year, just because they didn't feel that was good enough. I mean,
yeah, they have the resources and support to do that, though.
Right. Well, chicken or the egg, right? We've talked about this. If all of a sudden you've got the cult, you've got the money. If you've got the money, you win, you get the cult. But for some reason, it never happened here. I'm worried it's never going to happen. So part of me wonders, like, what the hell's the point anymore? Like, let's just go out there, win our 6 or 7 games, go enjoy a road trip, go enjoy a little bowl game somewhere, and that's a great season for us. But when you talk, it's the expectations game. When I talk about the division of the money, you're talking about Maryland basketball. That is a program that can win it all because they have. In my lifetime, I was there when I was literally in school. Maryland football won a national championship. That was great. It was in the 50s before my parents were born. Like, it's just not the same thing. Ralph's years were great, but they still got spanked by Florida State every year. They got spanked by Notre Dame when they got spanked by Florida in the bowl game. Like, it's never been that great, even when it's great here. So when you look at someone like David Emmons, who was obviously a Georgia athletic director in the past, like, he's a football guy. Part of letting us in the Big Ten was, the idea that Maryland was going to have to invest in football. But what's that gotten us at this point?
They have invested.
Although I will say, Indiana showed this year with this new expanded playoff, you still got a puncher's chance.
It can happen.
That was never the case before. It was just
That's absolutely true. Now, what will be interesting to see is can they follow that up? Can they follow it up? Can they become like an Iowa level program, a team that you're going to expect to win 8, 9, 10 games a year, compete for a conference championship, or are they going to just slowly fall back to where they were because they just kind of had all those JMU guys come in and they all knew the system and it just worked?
It's always a 90% chance that they just fall off the next year.
I think 8-4-ish next year for them. All right, we're going to end football on one positive note. After Emmanuel Iheanacho commits to Maryland, they will jump to 16th in the rankings. There you go.
They could get him. I think they have a real chance.
They are going to get him, and they will be 16th in the rankings after he commits.
Maybe he'll room with Derik Queen for Queen's junior season.
Boom. There we go. All right.
Like we're all just openly dreaming at this point.
I said 8-4 for Indiana Septical, not for. He said that I said Indiana. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Septical 8-4. Yes, for Indiana. I think that's what they're going to be this year. 8-4. All right. We are now going to go to Paul's favorite segment of the show, the non-rev
Hey everyone,
report.
This is Wheels with your Inside Maryland Sports non-rev report. The flu's hit the Wheels household this week, so I'm feeling a bit under the weather. But that doesn't mean that the non-revs aren't really kicking in. Spring sports are getting into gear starting this week. But we're going to start with those fall, winter sports that are beginning to wrap up their regular seasons. We're going to start there with men's wrestling, which is having its best season since joining the Big Ten, including recently earning a top 25 ranking. But when you have to face the first, second, 11th, and 12th ranked teams in a row, life comes at you fast in the Big Ten.
1, 2, 11, and 12.
They look to get their 4th conference win on Friday when they head out to Purdue. Gymnastics is kind of having an average year by their own standards. They're just at 1-3 in conference play so far. They're heading out west to Seattle to tumble with UW on Friday.
Oh,
catch
tumble.
that on BTN Plus. Women's golf getting
good.
into swing. Sorry for all the puns. They're heading down to Florida this weekend for a big tournament that includes several other Big Ten teams. And tennis is looking to continue its 2-match winning streak when they welcome VCU and Towson to College Park on Friday. Finally, let's go to the lacrosse field. 10th-ranked women opened their season on Saturday with a visit from Syracuse at 11 a.m. If you are so inclined and willing to maybe battle some rainy weather, you can then head over to CQ Stadium at 1 to watch the 6th-ranked men take on the 2nd-ranked Syracuse Orange in a battle of two of the bluest blue buds in the entire sport. And that's our wrap for your IMS Non-Rev Sports Report. Stay safe out there, everyone.
A Towson tennis match is going to be epic. I'm thinking of going to that one if you guys.
I'm excited
You
for
flying in for that, Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah.
The women's golf team. We know throughout the years we've had our favorites.
You have.
Yes.
You've been
Yes, we
like
have.
creepy old guy up on the women's golf team
Yes,
over decades.
Yes, we have. Juliet
Disappointing
Pope-
news on gymnastics too. Like
I
my
know.
coach is wasting a lot of talent. You can't just
Yeah.
roll. You can't roll the pommel horse out there and just expect to beat people. You know.
Man.
All right.
Sorry,
We
that was
said-
terrible.
We're gonna do.
Roll out the does he roll out the pommel horse?
Fuck.
We're gonna
It's
do.
somebody here listening to the show is familiar with how pommel horses work, and whoever you are out there,
You can't just wheel it out. You can't just do anything. You know, you have
Yeah.
to be.
do you roll it? Do you carry it? Does he bolt that sucker into the floor? Like, I need to know this. I need to know.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to do the pommel horse on wheels. That would make it a much more fun sport to watch.
I don't know. I was a big fan of the pommel
Yeah.
horse guy during the Olympics. That was cool.
Yeah, every gymnastic event has to be on wheels now. The bar.
Make them do the dizzy
Yeah.
bat. The dizzy
Yeah,
bat before they go on there.
the rings, but it's on wheels, so it's moving.
I feel like they're doing weird stuff with golf like that, with the Top Golf thing and the Live team. Like they can mess around with this, to make this fun. Right? Somebody's got to get on that.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's go to questions. We're going to start with some questions from the message board first. Maryland.247sports.com. First one comes from Tillman Terp, and he says, with the discussion around Abina Akizi's son's recruitment, that Abina really has no connection to the program. My question is, does Willard make an effort to reach out and keep former players connected to the program? Locks and Tillman are very noted for keeping former players connected to the program, but I never hear of such efforts currently with the basketball program. Jeff?
I don't think never is accurate. There's been a lot of stuff on social media in the off season of guys coming in, but I will say it does seem like it's declined. Like during that honeymoon phase, he was bringing in tons of guys, and now you haven't seen it quite as much. And Abina, I think he moved back to Nigeria, so he's been out of the loop for a long time. His son is a top 5 player in 2026. Wait, is he 26 or 27? I'm trying to remember.
27, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Are the two locals in
27? Yeah. Along with Baba, the kid from Blake High School in Silver Spring, who's the #1 player in the country. I actually wrote some stuff I was hearing about him this week. But long story short,
Yeah, that recruitment's on you, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
not
your territory.
It is. I'm proud to see a Silver Spring guy, #1 in the country. It's so rare to see a guy like that stay at a local public high school. You know, that basically never happens these days, but it sounds like he might actually stay. And there's some pretty good connections between him and his family and College Park, and some good early stuff going on there. You know, he's 2 years away, obviously. In terms of Willard, like, I don't think he's brought guys back as much lately. I remember Herder came back not too long ago, but it was the same thing. I mean, I'll put it this way. He's been better than, I don't want to say better, but he's been more mindful of doing that than Turgeon was.
And even Turgeon did that right away. If you remember,
Yeah.
back when he first got here, he brought in some guys, had like a big barbecue at his house and all that stuff.
Exactly.
But
And then you get busy, and you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think he really went out of his way to bring the Gary guys back. I think there was something there. I don't know exactly what it was, but Willard's been a little better. But still, there are definitely some guys who are, estranged, so to speak.
Why is this not showing for us? Johnny B with the clarification. Thank you, Johnny B. Google says you need to simply pick up and move a pommel horse with multiple people, no wheels. Thank you for the
But
classification on pump.
Yeah,
think
but
of how much fun it would be if you put wheels on that sumbitch.
That's what I'm saying. They got to actually do the event while it's on wheels.
Yeah.
That's okay. Number 2 from Sticky Pickle is Zion Ely taking visits so that he can recruit for Maryland. That seems like a weird thing to me because all the other kids are committed elsewhere, and are they recruiting for their school too? Like, who's got the stronger pool? Are they all doing that? Really?
I'm sure he's trying a little bit. I have no doubt he's trying some, but I don't think that's why he's taking the visits.
Yeah.
You know, that's just what you do when you're the number 2 player in the country, and next year is the first year ever of athletes being paid over the table millions of dollars. Like that kid, there's no one has been born at a better time than that guy and other kids in his position, right? Ones before him, elite kids 5 years ago never got a dime, a lot of them. And now you're coming along at the time where you can make $1 million, $2 million a year. The Baba kid who we talked about, basketball, he'll probably be, $1.5 million, $2 million. Who knows? Actually, it's 2027. So
Bryce Underwood, the guy, the Michigan guy, $12 million.
Yeah.
For 4
I just think
years.
about those kids. Like you could not have been an elite athlete born at a better time than these guys.
Yep. Sticky Pickle again. How good is Maryland's portal haul? I did a little research on that because I saw that he asked the question.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. They lost more players than they brought in, but the players they brought in, the ratings are higher. So I think they've actually improved a little bit through the portal. And oddly enough, we talked about Justin Martin. He's rated higher than Billy Edwards. Would you feel better with Edwards coming back because you know what you got? And he showed a lot of good things last year, right? But they have Justin Martin rated higher, so who knows?
I think they got quality, like you said, Larry. They got quality, not huge quantity. The Dorian Fleming, the tight end I mentioned from Georgia State, I think he's really good. I think the kid Jamari Glasker, the cornerback from Wake Forest, is really good. So they got some nice a couple offensive linemen, but they need a lot more. There was a couple of rankings or lists that came out last week in terms of transfer portal recruiting classes, and it was kind of lukewarm on there. So
Maryland's 31st according to
which is not a terrible place to be, but when you're coming off that kind of season, you need to really reload. But I broke it down.
Glasker's a 4-star.
Yeah.
But so is Ratrell Perry, the biggest recruit of need, transfer of need, a 4-star offensive tackle. He's the
there were multiple guys that I looked at the rankings and where they ranked in the Big Ten, and I think Justin Martin, the quarterback from UCLA, was the second highest rated quarterback transfer going to a Big Ten team. The offensive lineman, Ratrell Perry, who you mentioned, was the second or third highest rated tackle going to a Big Ten team. There were a few guys like that where they had where they were one of the top 5 coming into the Big Ten. So they did get some players, but you just need more
of them. Okay.
Yeah, I like the players they've got coming in. I think they need more, and I'm just tired of rankings right now. Like every year, Maryland's recruiting classes in the 30s or the high 20s. You get these transfer classes that are in the 30s and high 20s, and we're not finishing anywhere near the 30s or high 20s. So that's not doing anything for me. You got to get it done.
They did for 3 years in a row. They were in the 30s.
They were in the 30s, going 7 and 5.
The transfer class is much more important than the high school class, obviously, at this point, because those high school kids, half of them are just going to, like has always been, regardless of the portal and everything, are just not going to be good enough. A bunch of them are going to transfer because they're not good enough or because they can get more money elsewhere, and almost none of them are going to be big-time players right away. So, high school classes, that's big, but And the kid they got that I forgot we didn't discuss the edge they got from Philly. Oh my God!
Zahir Mathis.
Thank you, Zahir Mathis. A couple weeks ago, who was the
happy Locksmiths, everybody.
Yeah, highest rated uncommitted player in the country. I think 140.
And a defensive end.
Yeah,
which
but
is
again, the report on him is super talented, but probably needs a year or two. So that's always the catch.
So he'll sort of blossom at Maryland, not really play, and then transfer out when he's ready. Okay, here we go. Anthony Sue Kim from the message board. Can you each we're not going to each do it. Can you each give a substitution pattern? obviously you got 5 starters. They're going to play 30-plus minutes, and then you've got 4 subs who – and you never want more than 2 of the subs on the court at the same time. That's the pattern. What else, Jeff, besides
I feel like I need like a flow chart to really just state a substitution pattern, and it depends a lot on foul trouble, if someone's not playing well. I mean, it's going to stay pretty much the same, right? How many options do you have off the bench, especially at guard? It's Deshaun Harris-Smith and Jay Young, basically. Yeah. So I don't know how much you can really
a lot of people
change it up. Yeah, but I would like to see Geronimo get some more minutes.
Yeah, I think Willard's gotten a little bit dependent on playing Reese and Queen together in a way that I didn't think it would work out that way. Where you could imagine, obviously you want to play them together when things start to matter, especially in the second half. But at the beginning of the season, especially when Gapari showed that he could be a serviceable player, and when he got hot, he got really hot. You could imagine pairing those guys off, one guy with Geronimo, one guy with Gapare, and being able to kind of split their minutes, keep them fresh, do that kind of stuff. I do worry if you get too dependent on playing those guys together, you're going to run into a much bigger issue. Obviously, with the guards, I just don't think you have a choice. You've got like 4 playable guards, and you just kind of have to roll with them.
They've done a really good job, though, developing the chemistry with Reese and Queen. Yeah. There were a couple passes in that Ohio State game, quick touch passes.
Really nice.
Queen, and then Reese had a couple really nice passes to Queen. So you can see them developing that, low post passing game. It's really tough to stop.
I think the only issue is when Queen gets a little heady when he's playing the high post with Reese on the low post, and because you want him to be able to create up there and dictate things. But that's also when you see him kind of do those out of control spin moves and trying to step back and hit like a contested 1-footed 18-footer. If he could be a little more judicious in how he plays that position, I mean, they can be unstoppable when the two of them are really playing well.
I'd like to see Rice handle it more too. He's underrated as a playmaker. People thought he was just going to be some spot up shooter. He's had some beautiful passes himself. He had one in the Ohio State game where he went in and wrapped it around, dropped it off to somebody, but he's really underrated as a playmaker, I think.
And he can get to the rim on his own. He can make his own shots. That's a huge thing, especially with that mid-range game of his.
Yeah, who's the last Maryland player that had mid-range game as good as his?
Morcell?
He's a throwback. No, Morcell's shooting touch wasn't as good. I think
not till senior year, really.
Yeah. He was better driving than scoring at the rim. Rice is not as athletic, but in terms of that mid-range, the pull-up jumper, he is.
Sean Mosley could do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's how far back you're going. I mean, it's
because no one does it anymore.
He's got an old school game for sure.
All right, freezing out from the message board. With the timing of the portal starting during March Madness, is it better for next year's roster to make a deep run or get knocked out early? Let me say this. In football, all the teams that made deep runs in the playoff, none of them have good transfer classes. They just didn't have time to focus on it. Now maybe they'll make up for it in the spring, but they haven't yet. It's almost kind of working like a draft in the NFL or professional leagues where the worst teams get to go first. And I don't hate that, actually. I know a lot of people hate the way it works right now. I think that might actually be kind of a cool thing. So that question, I think, next year's roster is better, but obviously you want to make the deep run. Go.
Yeah, it definitely helped last year. There's no question about it. They had that miserable season, got an early start, and end up with a great transfer class, probably top 10 in the country. But was it because of that, or did they just happen to do a good job this year? I don't know, but the head start definitely didn't hurt. But obviously you're not going to choose that over going to the tournament. I guess it's a nice
deep run.
It's a nice
deep run. Deep run. Maryland has to show it can win. Why are people coming here? If everybody's getting, at least on the basketball side, football is always its own animal. On the basketball side, everybody's going to have enough money to compete because you're only talking, you don't need to pay for 7 or 8 players realistically, right? So I think it's more about Maryland under Wheeler showing that they're able to compete when it matters. And I think that's going to be a bigger draw it's not just going to be like, we're going to have more money than everybody else does.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, can you come here? We've got playing time and we can win.
Yeah, but it wasn't a hypothetical. What would you rather have? He was saying, is next year roster, is it going to be better if they make a deep run or not? Obviously, you want the deep run, but if they make the deep run, it will negatively impact their transfer recruiting. It will.
But you're also talking about like
1
week, right? You're talking about 1 week difference between losing unless you go to the Final Four, which nobody's trading for anything.
If you make it past the first weekend, it's still 2 weeks.
It's 1 week. I mean, because you're going to either lose over Sweet 16 or Elite 8 weekend, or you're going to go to the Final Four. So you're talking about 1 week difference between the teams that lose in the first weekend and the teams losing the second weekend. I just don't think that's really an issue, especially since all these agents and family and everybody else is already talking to coaches.
It's not necessarily 2 weeks, because if you're having a season like they had last year where you're not going like a month ahead of time, you're definitely frantically working back channels to find out who's going to be available before the season ends. But
they also know what their roster situation is going to be already, right? Like, so right now, like, you don't need to guess that Maryland's going to desperately need 2 big men next year. Even if Queen comes back, they still need 2 big men. They won't be able to afford the level of big men they want, but they, because I have to pay Queen, but they still need guys. So like that stuff's already happening.
Yes.
Like, people will be like, oh, that's tampering. Yeah, sure, whatever. But like, it's happening everywhere. So like, I just don't think that's as big a deal. I think it's way bigger that Maryland can go out there and actually show they can get something done in the tournament for once.
C Money asked a very similar question, and we already answered it, but I'll still call you out. C Money, does a deep tourney run mean less now with the transfer portal NIL, or could it help increase NIL funding? We already just answered that. All right, Hager asked 2 questions, a 2-parter, directed at Paul. So, Paul, what are your thoughts on the current state of the football program? You kind of already did it, but go ahead if you want to do the TLDR version.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad right now. It's that looks like a 3 or 4 win team next year to me. And I know Loxley well enough that I'm sure he feels similarly, or at least is aware that he needs to really nail it during the spring. So I
think he feels great about the transfer class. He feels like he got some dudes who are way better than people realize, and he might be right. I mean, he did get some good players, but it's when you have questions, enough? Yeah, when the biggest question marks are at quarterback, offensive line, and defensive back. That's running back.
Defensive line.
Nothing is settled. Nothing.
I can't. Who's our starting defensive line right now? Anybody know?
It would be
Dylan
Fontes, who actually I think could be pretty good.
Kicker is settled. I think that might be it. Hey, the dude, he says, did I miss Jameer?
Jameer missed us, unfortunately.
Jameer got a last-minute invite from like a VIP to go to the Wizards game or something like that, so he could not make it. We'll get him on soon, though. Also, we're going to have Chris Jeffrey will be on soon, the Maryland commit for basketball, and then also Damon Evans is very close to signing up to come on the show pretty soon also.
I've been after him for a very long time.
You've worked that one for a minute.
I worked it. Jeff is in to be the closer on that one for me. All right, Hager's second half of his question. And Paul, when are you going to a men's lacrosse game with Larry?
I will go to a period. I will go to a game with Larry. If Larry and Wheels will go, I'll go. I have a bit of a sordid history going to men's lacrosse games because I have a tendency to drink way too much at the tailgate beforehand, and hilarity has ensued. So I typically don't do that anymore. So maybe we can try one out this year if we get the boys together.
All right. From Chris L on the message board, we are gonna lose at Nebraska, aren't we? Let's just do predictions right now. Well, from that question. So go ahead, Jeff.
I think they get over the hump. I think Ohio State was a fluke letdown. If you take that out of the equation, they're on a huge streak right now. Nebraska's a little dangerous. I don't know how you lose 6 in a row and then win 4 in a row. That's crazy, but I think they win a close one.
Paul?
I feel good about the team this year. I don't feel good about tomorrow, and I think they lose that one.
I feel beaten down by these road games because it happened again. But I'm just gonna stay positive and say this is the time. The Illinois thing was the outlier, and the Indiana was a miracle. This is the one they figure out, and they win by the solid 7 to 8 point margin. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay, now we're getting into some questions from YouTube, from the live chat. Ethan Podboreski says, "Why do the AP voters hate us?" Jeff,
They don't hate us.
They don't have them. No, they just lack the analytics are great, and the wins. They didn't lose to anybody bad, and they have a bunch of quad one wins, but they don't really have a bunch of splashy. They've beaten 2 ranked teams. I think both were number 17 at the time, unless I'm forgetting a third. Was there a third ranked win? That's it, right?
I think there is one more in there.
So I think to the average person, you don't see them beating big name teams, and a lot of the voters are just lazy. They only follow the conference that they cover, of the team they cover, and I think that's
it's also the situation where like the teams that start in the rankings stay in the rankings,
right?
And Maryland was not expected to be super great this year, so it takes a lot to earn your way in. And of course, they earn their way in and lose the first game as soon as they get in there. But luckily, they didn't fall out, and hopefully, they'll take care of business this next couple of weeks, and this won't be a discussion anymore.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty fairly ranked, maybe a little low, but part of it is coming out and playing UMass and whoever else I think they played. Damn it, I couldn't think of it. What's the online colleges that they're always advertising on TV? Strayer. They played
University.
Strayer. And University of Phoenix was, but they didn't play anybody early, so you don't. And then the 2 that they had a chance to grab that marquee win, they lost close games against Marquette and
at Purdue.
So
Ben Linton from YouTube asks, "Who's our go-to guy in late game situations?"
That's a really good one. They don't really have that guy necessarily. Like
any of the 5 really could be, right?
Yeah, I don't think they have a closer, and that might be part of a little bit of losing those leads late in losing these close games. You have a lot of good players, but no one has proven themselves to just be, have ice in their veins in those late game situations. Probably Gillespie by default because he's the guy who handles the ball best and can shoot the 3 and get to the basket. Queen's inconsistent. Juju's not necessarily we have 10 seconds left, let's throw it to him kind of guy. He gets his stuff in the flow of the game a lot of the time. So I don't think that guy exists. It just alternates.
I like Rice, but he's not a guy who kind of demands the ball in those situations. But he's a bucket getter. He's he's a three level scorer and good size, good on the bounce. If I had to pick a guy, I might like him.
I think you're right. He has no conscience. So many times this season, they've needed that big shot or big play. And he's had more of those, I feel like, maybe than anybody, at least if you compare it to the number of opportunities he's had. So he is a very clutch. Excuse me, I can't talk tonight. Clutch player. So he's definitely a guy. But it's not like when there's a Melo or somebody like that is getting the ball late. And maybe that'll be a good thing for them. Keep it deep.
Yeah, there's really nobody out of the starting 5 because they're all so good. Nobody defers to anybody. It's just kind of all right, well, we're just going to run the set and see what happens, And I don't hate that necessarily because they're all very good, but I don't think any of them are good enough to be I'm the guy, give me the ball, and everybody else get out of the way.
Yep.
Multiple people in the chat backing you guys up on that one. Hunter Riggs from YouTube asks, maybe the bench guys aren't green lighted by Willard. They all seem hesitant to take a shot, fearing sitting back on the bench versus Miguel, Rice, Gillespie, Queen, Reese.
I don't think so. He gives guys freedom. He said it out loud. I'm always surprised when he says it out loud that as long as you play defense, you can take any shot on his team. So I don't think they're limited. And Jay Young, he was a 30% career 3-point shooter. I don't know what he's at now, but at least as of a week ago, he was 41%. So he's been really solid. And Gapari's had his moments too. I don't know what his dunk percentage though is. I think he's about 30% on dunks this season. He needs to work on that.
You got to work on finishing a little bit. But
he had one really kick-ass half-court alley-oop. They should just do that all the time.
Yeah, he has some spectacular misses, though. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Yes. All
He's
right.
got the Will Coxian, you could say. Not quite one into like the stands bad.
Well, Wilcox made them most of the time. Gapari,
Yeah, but wait, Wilcox missed, man. They went in the upper deck. I mean, he would just absolutely demolish rims.
Sam Hornbecker asks, would you rather have a 6 seed or a double bye in the Big Ten tourney? Am I the only one that thinks it's obvious you want the double bye because the goal is to win the tournament?
Well, the question is, if you have the double bye, then what seed do you have in the tourney?
You're
probably a 6 seed, right? Or a 6 seed or better, right? So
no, you're 1 through 4 if you get the double bye.
No, I mean
the
NCAA.
GA says in the Big Ten tourney. The question's about the Big Ten tournament. Do you want the 6 seed or the double bye?
I think what he's trying to say is, would you rather guarantee a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament or a double bye in the conference tournament?
No, I'd say, I don't know. I would probably say
the way it's worded,
maybe 6 seed, but it seems like they'll be at that level. That's
no, the way it's worded, he's talking all about the Big Ten. I think he's saying because you get an extra game against a bad team to add a win to the resume, and there's some small advantage in that, mate. But that's the way I'm interpreting it. But I would rather have the double bye.
The conference tournament really doesn't matter. It's more for fun. It's going to help your seeding a little bit, but
we have to win 2 in Paul's lifetime, so he can be wrong about that.
Oh, that'll happen again.
It's only been 20 years.
All right, Ben Linton says.
That one.
Ben Linton says, which Terps bench player needs to step up the most down the stretch?
That's obvious, Harris Smith, right? Because we mentioned his limitations, but he's still capable of making a good impact. We've seen him do it here and there. He just needs to do it consistently. He's the guy you obviously need to step up, because the other guys, are kind of limited role players who just have a specific niche. Like Jay Young is a great defender. He's hitting threes too. Kapari's your athletic, kind of dynamic guy. And also the lack of, Malachi Palmer's not playing at all either for the most part. So I think Harris Smith is definitely the guy. But I wasn't shown he can do it.
I kind of agree, but I also think Kapari maybe, because it's almost certain that in these games, Queen or Reese are going to get into foul trouble, and I would bet if anybody's doing more stat homework, I would bet those games where Kapari's gone off are games that Maryland's really rolled teams in, because it seems like when he gets on the court and he's playing well, you're able to rotate in Queen and Reese, keep them fresh, and get that scoring and that kind of. He has those kind of, whether it's dunks or 3-pointers, like seems every time he scores, it's big. It's like a momentum play. So like I kind of might lean that direction, because I also just don't expect Harris Smith's going to give you anything.
Yeah.
All right. From JM, what does it say about Willard that if DHS moves on, that whole class left? Some of it's just variance. I mean, 2 of those players were highly celebrated when they came in. So
Harris Smith was a 5-star. He was number 25 in the country.
And Kaiser was
like 70-ish. Yeah.
If you look at the list of WCAC players of the year who came into college, DHS is like the only miss on that list in the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, that is like the surest bet in high school basketball recruiting, that if you are the player of the year, if you're a really good player in that conference in high school, you are going to be a really good college basketball player. And just everybody missed. It just
best league in the country, probably.
I don't think
Yeah.
it says anything that much about Willard. Also, it's his first class. He's grabbing who he can get locally. He
recruited who we wanted, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what are you supposed to say about? I mean, yes, it's his job to make sure he gets those evaluations right. But I can't blame him for that one. I just
if after years that continues to happen, then you start saying maybe he has a problem with evaluation. But it's a one-off right now. So, all right,
Absolutely.
Hunter Riggs says, "What are the stats on refs favoring the home team?" I have no idea. They clearly do.
That's esoteric. I haven't looked at any stats. I mean, I feel like this. Maybe I'm just getting more critical. I feel like the refs have gotten even worse this year. Like maybe the players, just as they continue to get more athletic and talented, it becomes a more difficult job. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly they're influenced by the home court. I'm sure somebody's done some sort of study on that, and there's a reason, obviously, that home court advantage gives you 3 or 4 points in the point spread.
All right, hang on. Our boy Anton Cuff, we thank you very much for the donation. You're our boy. You do it all the time. This has to be the worst hypothetical I've ever seen. Do you want an 8 seed in the Duke bracket or a 5 seed in the Alabama with Kansas at the? I guess it means 4.
Probably a 5 seed with Alabama. Or
Yeah,
Kansas.
you want a 5 seed over an 8
I think
seed
he's
every
saying,
time.
because everybody's been craving that Duke game is why.
Yeah, but come on, man. You want the 5 seed. You don't want the 8 seed.
Especially against Cooper Flagg and two other top 10 picks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure whether good as Duke is all that elite this year, given how the ACC's down. But you don't want to play those.
They're
dudes.
good. They're
You
good.
don't want to play those
They're
dudes.
good, man. They're
Not that Alabama or Kansas are not.
3 lottery picks on the team.
Yeah, but that formula has not been working for them recently. How many deep runs have they had?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
We love our boy Antoine Cuff, one of our favorites.
Absolutely.
Always chipping in. All right. Leo asks, any portal rumblings for Maryland basketball? We kind of already talked about it. Anything else you can add in there?
No, I mean, you hear some names, guys might be available. I'm not quite at that stage yet, but I would say in about another month or a few weeks, that's when things start to get out. Like this kid he wants out of this school, or he's interested in coming home and that sort of thing. But right now, everybody's just focused on March for the most part.
Morgan Zaleski asks, will the basketball practice facility be complete by the time they get here? I guess, does he mean next year's players? What does he?
I think it's supposed to be done by next fall. I asked them maybe a month or so ago. I believe the date that they said or the time frame was next fall, but I'd have to double check to clarify that.
Mr. Popo asks, this is a tough one. If Johns Hopkins never drops football to D3, does Maryland football maintain a higher relevance in the state?
I've been thinking about that one all the time lately.
Yeah, it's such a hypothetical. It's hard to say, but I have to think Maryland would still be a higher relevance than Johns Hopkins.
I can't even pretend to
it's
have
such
an
a
answer.
small school.
It's a pro town. I think it's always going to be a pro town. I'm not sure any football program here could really succeed to the way it does out in other places.
I took it as, would Maryland or Johns Hopkins be the more relevant program if they had stayed in Division I?
It's hard to know. The only caveat being if Hopkins stayed in Division I and say had some level of success. Once the Colts moved out of Baltimore, maybe you could imagine the city rallying around that. But I doubt it. They didn't rally around Maryland. So
yeah. All right. Last one from Micah Wheatley. How about some positivity, Paul? Always down on Maryland football year after year. So we're going to end it with Paul coming up with something positive to say about the football team.
That punter, hey, hold on. That punter from Notre Dame was really good last year.
They have an excellent. Honestly, the punter might be the best returning player on the team right now.
He was good.
He might be.
Is
that the best, most positive thing you can say?
I don't know, man. Look.
Here's the positive. The positive, they got a ton of talent at linebacker. That could be one of the better linebacking units in the Big Ten. And the QB, I mean, the guy, he has the pedigree. He was a 4-star recruit, supposedly second best QB coming into the Big Ten. So, you just got to basically bank on these transfers being really good. But I think they're really good at linebacker.
Isn't the positive the recruiting? That top 25 class last
you're right.
year?
That is the positive. I tend to forget about the high school class because it's so ingrained in me now. Like, those guys.
December signing day is like a year ago.
It's so ingrained in me that those guys, you don't know, they're probably not going to help right away. Even Malik Washington probably isn't ready to start. He'll get some reps. But, yeah, you're right, Larry. That was a breakthrough recruiting class, getting a guy like Malik Washington, who they really haven't gotten.
Gilchrist plays.
Haven't gotten. Jalen Gilchrist is an elite offensive lineman. They got 2 of the top 5 guys out of Virginia with him and Messiah Delhomme. They've never been able to get good players from Virginia, so that was a huge breakthrough. So, like, the star power in that class is probably better than any class in a while. So you're right.
I like a lot of guys from last year's class, too. I really like Terez Davis. I really like Ryan Howerton on the offensive line. I think you've got 2 bookend tackles for the future if you keep them around. Like, there's definitely some things to be excited about. I'm worried about next year. I think next year.
No, Paul, remember the question. It took Jeff and I talking positive, and then you just said one thing, and then you immediately went back. You got to end it.
I can't lie. I can't lie to the people, Lawrence.
You're not lying. You're not lying because nothing is 100% good or 100% bad. You focused on the bad stuff so far. We need you to focus on whatever there is that's good.
Who's excited about starting Octavian Smith and Shalik Knotts with Jaleel Fuka at wide receiver? Anybody?
I am.
Nobody is.
I'm very, very excited to see
that was a debate on the site, actually. People saying they're good at receiver, and I disagreed. I feel like you got to get another proven guy in there. You have one. Jaleel Farouk could be a number 1 receiver, has the makings of it. Hasn't been that before, but at least you got a chance. Octavian Smith started to look good toward the end of the year, but he could just still be like a utility guy. You don't have anybody else proven, and all those young receivers they took the past few years, maybe somebody pans out, but you just don't know. I think star power running back, though, actually is a thing. Nolan Ray, I feel like he could be a star. He should have probably gotten more carries this year, but I think they were loyal to Roman Hemby, and then the kid behind him, DeJuan Williams from St. Francis. They felt like if he wasn't injured in high school, and they probably wouldn't have gotten him. He would have gone to Bama or somewhere like that. So they feel like he's a stud. So I don't want to paint it all as doom. They do have some talent.
Well, and just to defend myself a little bit here, okay, I am not deluded into thinking Maryland is going to be a championship football program, but I really go out and enjoy when we win 6, 7, or 8 games, go to a silly little bowl game and, dump mayonnaise on ourselves and have a good time. Like, there's plenty of positive in that. I'm trying to condition everyone for what this program is capable of doing. And if you go into every season thinking we're going to win 10 games, you're going to have a lot of real miserable ass seasons. I'm sorry I got to do like the SVP enjoy the moments thing. But for football, for Maryland football, that's what it is. For Maryland basketball, that's unacceptable. Maryland basketball should be better than that. Maryland football shouldn't. It just shouldn't.
Basketball is a 10 times.
It should.
Job.
It should be better. It should.
I sure want it to be, but reality is what it is, man. Also, Jaden Daniels, love you.
Also, we're going on an hour and a half.
I was trying to push through the show earlier, and you guys kept going.
I wanted to see how long we could go before Jeff started sending bitchy text messages. Be like, all right, end it.
I was trying to push through the show multiple times, but you guys went on your rolls. And
I think it's been a great show.
Let it go.
We got lots of good questions. There's nothing wrong with that. We haven't done this in a while.
Okay. All right. It has been an hour and a half, and we would like to thank. No, we wouldn't, Jameer Young, for
we'll get him.
Not joining us. We'll get him. We will thank him for his 2 years at College Park playing for the Terps because he was.
I'm excited for him too because he's been really good in the G League.
Going off. He had 40. He had 40 and 10 yesterday. 40 points, 10 assists, or maybe
he's got a real shot to put it together up there and make a little bit of noise in the league. So that's good for him.
Sure. All right, thank you everybody for joining. If you have not subscribed, please do that. If you're listening on the pod, sign into YouTube. Give us subscribe.
Yeah, take 1 second. That's all we ask. Take 1 second. Go to YouTube. Click the follow button.
Click the like button, all that stuff too. It always really
and that means all of your YouTube accounts, your kids' accounts, the whole thing. Come on, just cycle through them. It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, of our we're like 16 or 1700 subscribers. I think 1100 of them are my accounts. All right, I'm just joking. I'm joking. I think it's 3. Counting IMS Radio as 1, and my personal account, my kids' account, something like that. All right.
Burner.
I don't have a burner. All right. Thank you, everybody. I think, do they play Wednesday next week?
I don't know, but if they do, we'll do a post game again. If not,
maybe.
Maybe.
I don't want to. We'll see. Well, we'll hopefully be back next week. We'll let you guys know when it is. This is IMS Radio.